You're watching live from New Delhi. This is DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Sakal Bhatt, and coming up in the next hour, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi to attend G7 Outreach Summit in Italy. Artificial intelligence, energy, Africa and the Mediterranean is an agenda of the summit. Prime Minister Modi to hold bilateral meetings with French President Macron, UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and President Zelenskyy of Ukraine. G7 leaders converge in Italy for G7 summit. Opens with loan deal worth $50 billion for Ukraine. Zelenskyy hails 10-year defense pact with President Biden as a bridge to NATO membership. Ukrainian Defense Minister Rustam Umerov joins NATO's defense ministers in Brussels, says urgent need and long-term necessity in the institutional changes to be addressed. Germany to begin their quest for a first major title as their Euro 2024 campaign kicks off against Scotland. With an aim to address critical issues affecting the global south, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi touched down at Brindisi Airport in Apulia in Italy on June 14th. India, represented by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, is participating as an outreach country to discuss global south concerns and bilateral cooperation. It will be an opportunity for India to, under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi, to bring greater energy and synergy between the outcomes of the G20 summit held under India's presidency. Remember, this is Prime Minister Narendra Modi's first foreign trip since he took oath as Prime Minister of India in third consecutive term. And this is seventh time that Italy is hosting the G7 summit. Here is an exclusive report from DD India's Amritpal Singh from Italy on G7.
India is not a member of the G7 but is invited as a partner country. This is the 11th time that India has been invited. The Prime Minister's attendance will be the 5th consecutive attendance in his first overseas visit after assuming office during his third term. The Prime Minister is expected to address an outreach session of the G7 summit where he could touch upon issues related to artificial intelligence, cooperation in the Mediterranean and with the African continent, as also energy security. The Prime Minister could raise the issue of counter-terrorism in his address. The Prime Minister shall also be holding bilateral meetings with his counterparts, both from the G7 countries as well as the G7 partner countries. There are 12 partner countries that have been invited by Prime Minister Meloni for the Italy summit of G7. Prime Minister, during its meetings, bilateral meetings with his counterparts, especially with the Italian Prime Minister, would like to review the entire gamut of the relationship, be it in the sectors of defense, IT, pharmaceuticals, people-to-people contact, or even textiles and pharmaceuticals. He will also meet with British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Interestingly, he shall be holding a bilateral meeting with President Zelenskyy of Ukraine, who has been invited by Giorgia Meloni. Prime Minister Meloni has been stressing that G7 must come together to deal with the conflict of Russia-Ukraine, which is dominating the agenda here at the G7 summit. Prime Minister Modi could once again reiterate the Indian position that the solution to the conflict can only be found through dialogue and diplomacy and not through military victory. He shall also meet with the French President Emmanuel Macron, as also he could meet his counterparts from the other G7 partner countries. With cameraman Shilinder Chauhan, this is Amritpal Singh for DD India in Apulia, Italy.
And from Apulia, DD India's Amritpal Singh is joining us live on this broadcast. Amrit, it's good morning to you over there. Immediate focus, the bilaterals that you mentioned in your report also, particularly with President Zelenskyy, where Ukraine conflict, in fact, the conflicts in the Middle East and Ukraine have taken the center stage. India's position on that and much more, and what all Prime Minister is going to talk about in the outreach session, Amrit.
In about 10 minutes from now, Sakal, Prime Minister will begin his first bilateral. It's morning time here. The Prime Minister will meet the French President for about 20 minutes. After that, he meets with the British Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak. He also has another bilateral before he goes in for the outreach session, to address the outreach session, which by Indian Standard Time would begin at about 5:30 in the evening. He has bilaterals after the outreach session with Giorgia Meloni, the German Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, with other G7 leaders. There are total of and partner leaders. There are about a total of with the Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida as well. So there are about a total of 7 bilateral meetings that he will hold apart from addressing the outreach session. As you rightly said, in the outreach session, he would raise the concerns that India has, especially, he would like to stress upon the concerns, needs, aspirations of the global south, because the partner countries are primarily from the global south. India representing Asia, Brazil from the South American continent. There are countries from the African continent who have been invited by Giorgia Meloni, and also from the Arab League. So, those countries are there. So the Prime Minister would essentially tell the developed world, which is represented by the G7, it is actually their summit. India and others are just partner countries or invitee countries who participate in the outreach session, would say that would convey to the G7 leadership that when you do your deliberations, when you decide on things, do factor in or the concerns of the rest of the world, of the developing world, of the global south, because that's where most of the world's population lives. Say, if you decide on what the future course of action on Ukraine, Russia should be, as you just mentioned, a $50 billion deal on providing more assistance to Ukraine from the frozen Russian assets, that directly impacts global supply chains. And the worst impact is, and the brunt is borne by those living in the global south, because their economies are weak. It has led to hunger in many parts of the world when the conflict started, because Ukraine and Russia being the food baskets of the world, it led to an energy crisis. Many economies went into a crisis because those who have strong, deep pockets can still, bear the brunt. But those with who are weaker economies have to bear the brunt the most. So, that would be the Prime Minister's thrust during his outreach session address to both the G7 countries and the partner countries.
Yes, and there are many firsts, Amrit, you would agree, attached to this edition of G7. 12 partner nations or invitees. You have Africa, you have Arab representation, and then you have the Indian Prime Minister addressing the global outreach session today. The eyes are set upon that. So, from that sense of term, what are the expectations? And if you could just underline the significance of India leading the center stage there in the outreach session, Global South, and other G7 expectations from India.
India is not the center stage here. India is just one of the participants in the outreach session. There are 11 others. But I'll tell you what India is. India has come to represent the voice of the global south. India has emerged as an undeclared leader of the global south, championing their causes because of its growing stature, because of its political heft. The world sits up and listens to India when India speaks. There are other countries, there are important countries. Brazil is an important country, but so there are, without drawing any comparisons, India has, because of its economic growth, because of its the role it has come to play in various theaters like the Indo-Pacific, the way it engages with the world. The world sits up and takes note of what India says, and India champions very, very seriously. So in that sense, India is in a very good position to champion the cause of the global south. So that is what the Prime Minister would want to use this opportunity for. As he said, post arriving here early this morning, in the wee hours of this morning, that that he would want to engage with the world leaders to find meaningful solutions to the challenges being faced currently by the world. So that is what India's role at this summit is.
Right.
Sakal?
Yes. The international capital, when India talks, the world listens. That's precisely what I wanted to ask you, Amrit. But please stay standby. Please be with us. We are going to come to you just in a bit. But we have some stories also to roll out for our viewers on this broadcast. The Group of 7 summit started its concluding day of the talks on Friday with migration, with China and artificial intelligence at the top of its agenda. Now, the G7 leaders have gathered for a round table on migration with Italy's Meloni, the Italian Prime Minister Meloni, pushing Europe to help her curb illegal flows from Africa. The leaders are also expected to discuss China's excess industrial capacity and its support for Russia. The annual summit will also see a historic appearance by Pope Francis to discuss artificial intelligence. The Pope will be joined by 10 other heads of the state and government, including Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi. Meanwhile, NATO defense ministers are meeting in Brussels as the day 2 begins. The ministers of NATO member states gathered on Thursday to discuss their support for Ukraine. Ukrainian Defense Minister Rustem Umerov in a statement said that urgent needs for more supplies and weapons, of air defense, of ammunition for Ukraine will be discussed at the meeting. Furthermore, the foreign ministers will also discuss the long-term financial pledge for Ukraine.
We appreciate for your personal leadership, for the NATO partners for our urgent support, and I look forward to discuss with you long-term cooperation models. And I think it will be our last meeting before the Washington summit, which we look forward to have soon on the leadership level, and we will be, of course, touching all the urgent needs and long-term necessity in the institutional changes that is being proposed.
And going back to a top story now, from Bari in Italy, Giles Gibson of DD India joins us live. Giles, good morning to you over there. Now, Group of 7 have opened already with a deal worth tens of billions of Ukraine, setting the tone for the summit and grabbing international headlines across the globe. So bring us up to speed as far as the overall deliverables are expected on day 2 today, Friday.
That's right. The focus of the talks on day 2 shifting from Ukraine, which really dominated the first day of this summit, to actually lots of different global issues. So they've started off the first session by talking about migration, which is really a pet topic for the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, who's put a huge amount of her political capital during her time in office over the last year and a half or so on trying to slow down the numbers of boats crossing the Mediterranean from northern Africa carrying people who are hoping to claim asylum in the European Union. Then they're going to move on to discussions on the Indo-Pacific and economic security. That last phrase there, we believe, is code really for what the G7 have been talking about for some months now, about their concerns about what they describe as Chinese industrial overcapacity and the effect of usually cheaper imports from China on their economies. And then in the afternoon session, that's when guests, including the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, will get involved in discussions, and we'll also see Pope Francis coming down from the Vatican to take part in some talks on the risks of artificial intelligence.
Right. So the timing also of the summit is crucial, you would agree. You're looking at political churning across Europe. There are crucial polls in UK, in US, conflicts in Ukraine, Gaza affecting the global instabilities. Already the conversations are taking place. So the top leadership of these respective regions are going to be there on the same table. They are there perhaps. So this makes Giles' outcome highly significant.
Yeah, if you look at the backdrop behind me with that beautiful sea coastline, this is really a holiday resort, and perhaps for some of these leaders, this trip represents a little bit of respite from some of the domestic turmoil that they've been facing. Just take Rishi Sunak, the UK Prime Minister, who is way behind in the polls ahead of the UK general election, Olaf Scholz, the German Chancellor, Emmanuel Macron, the French President, both of them suffering from pretty tough performances for their parties in the recent European elections. And then on the flip side, you have Giorgia Meloni, the Italian Prime Minister, who is coming into this in a much stronger position because her party, the Brothers of Italy, had such a strong performance in the recent European elections.
You spoke about the Italian Prime Minister, where the migration seems to be a top priority for her in the summit. She has sought increased investment and funding for African nations as a means to sort of reduce pressure on Europe. So what does this really mean for the host country?
Yeah, so Giorgia Meloni, the Italian Prime Minister, talked about the vision of the Italian presidency for the G7, and she talked about basically wanting it to be an outward-looking group, not an inward-looking group. She said it shouldn't be a fortress that sort of puts walls up, to keep the world out. It should be looking out to the rest of the world, and that is certainly reflected in the very extensive guest list of world leaders and leaders of international organizations who are coming to southern Italy for this second day. So as I mentioned, you've got Pope Francis, you've also got the Argentinian President Javier Milei, the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, this whole list of people from outside the G7 who've been invited to take part.
Also, very quickly, if you could just give us a sense if at all there are some divisions emerging over the critical issues that they've been talking about. Overall declaration, what is really expected, and do we really have an overall consensus building on the same?
There have been some reports that there have been some differences, some disagreements between the countries, because some countries wanted to have a line about the issue of abortion in the joint statement, and we've heard reports not confirmed publicly that the Italian side were against that line being put in. Of course, Giorgia Meloni comes from a far-right political party, a very conservative political party. But otherwise, I think the central question of this summit, whether the leaders were going to be able to reach that political deal about that $50 billion loan for Ukraine, that central question has been answered. And so now we're just looking to see what else they can agree on to put in the final joint statement at the end of this summit.
All right, Giles, many thanks for joining us live from Bari in Italy. We'll, of course, keep getting back to you later in the day. You have a busy day, so thank you very much. And US President Joe Biden and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy have signed a 10-year bilateral security agreement on Thursday, aiming at bolstering Ukraine's defense against Russia's attack. The deal, signed on the sidelines of the G7 summit in Italy, aims to commit future US administration's support to Ukraine. The US-Ukraine security deal is a framework for a long-term effort to help develop Ukraine's outdated armed forces and serve as a step towards Ukraine's eventual NATO membership.
President Zelenskyy and I have just now signed that agreement between the United States and Ukraine. Our goal is to strengthen Ukraine's credible defense and deterrence capabilities for the long term. The United States is going to help ensure that Ukraine can do both, not by sending American troops to fight in Ukraine, but by providing weapons and ammunition, expanding intelligence sharing, continuing to train brave Ukrainian troops at bases in Europe and the United States, enhancing interoperability between our militaries in line with NATO standards, investing in Ukraine's defense industrial base, so in time, they can supply their own weapons and munitions.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has called the agreement historic, saying it is a bridge towards Ukraine's eventual NATO membership.
It's a truly historic day, and we have signed the strongest agreement between Ukraine and the US since our independence. And this is something that will not only provide security, but also new good jobs for Ukrainians and Americans. The issue of NATO is covered through the text of the agreement. It states that America supports Ukraine's future membership in NATO and recognizes that our security agreement is a bridge to Ukraine's membership in NATO.
Shifting focus to elections in Britain, Reform UK overtakes the Prime Minister Sunak's Conservative Party in opinion polls. Ahead of Britain's election on 4th of July, Reform UK leader Nigel Farage declared his party the opposition to Labour after an opinion poll showed it had overtaken the Conservatives for the first time. The survey, which involved 2,211 participants and was carried out from June 12 to 13, revealed that Reform UK has garnered 19% support and 2% increase from their previous standing, while the Conservatives have remained unchanged at 18%.
What I will do, if you give me the honour of being your Member of Parliament, I will stand up and fight for people. I will stand up and fight for small businesses against the regulators. I will stand up and fight for people to get their rights. I will stand up and fight to make sure that schools are not poisoning the minds of your children.
DD India's Ollie Barrett joins us live from London for more of this. So, Ollie, is it really surprising? I mean, the trends are fluctuating now. The Reform takes the pole position with Conservatives following suit.
Well, it's interesting that we've reached this point because it's been speculated for some time during this election campaign that there might come a moment when Reform UK overtook the Conservatives in the polls. And the fact that it has happened in one poll is significant, and it's very worrying indeed for candidates who hope to be elected as MPs for the Conservative Party in the July the 4th election. It has been headed in this direction for some time, according to all of the polling. Now, the caveat applies that it is just one poll at this point, which puts Reform ahead of the Conservatives. But as we've been hearing from Reform leader Nigel Farage, he says that that means that his party are effectively the opposition now to Labour, who remain way out ahead, according to all of the polling. Now, it's not quite as simple as that, because in the UK's electoral system, first past the post, it's about winning constituency seats rather than gaining a national share of the vote. And so the fact that Reform are either ahead of or close to the Conservatives doesn't necessarily mean that they will bring home more than one or two or three or a handful of members of Parliament in the July the 4th vote.
Okay.
The Conservatives say what all of this means is not that there are going to be lots of Reform MPs after July the 4th, but they say that votes for Reform will simply take votes away from the Conservatives and hand a larger majority, a larger potential majority to the Labour Party. So that is the real concern for Conservatives at this point, that the danger of Reform is that they will lose some of their key seats, key constituency races, and then that will return eventually more Labour MPs and give Keir Starmer potentially a large majority.
Okay, so what, according to you, has really given us this advantage to the lead as far as this Reform UK is concerned? And you're saying that this could be a temporary situation.
There are clearly a number of factors at play here. Reform UK would say that this is partly about immigration, and that they believe that they are talking tough on particularly illegal immigration. At the same time, they say, as the Conservative Party over
14 years of government has failed in repeated pledges to bring overall migration down, but also to get on top of illegal immigration. There are other factors here as well, though. We are clearly in the phase of an electoral process, with the Conservatives having been in power for 14 years, where many voters simply feel that it's time for someone else and they are looking elsewhere. We're also in the phase of the general election campaign, where some voters may be saying that they plan to vote for reform, but end up, when they get to the ballot box, if they are a right of centre voter, eventually thinking that actually they might vote for the Conservatives to limit that possibility of a large Labour majority. But the Conservatives are definitely struggling, having been in power for so long. The Labour Party say that's because they've been bad at governing. They've caused some of the chaotic episodes with regards to the economy and elsewhere over recent years. But we are also definitely just at that stage now where it's very difficult for a party in this country, in this electoral system, to stay in power for beyond that decade mark. It's very rare that it happens, and when it does, you often tend to get a change in party some point not too long after that decade mark. And as I say, the 14-year period that the Conservatives have been in power now does just seem to have some voters yearning for something different.
Okay, but is it all but over for Rishi Sunak and Conservatives as far as their dwindling popularity, quoting these opinion polls, are concerned? Because you would agree, Ollie, these are very keenly watched polls, UK polls across the globe.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, the Conservatives insist this is not over. They insist they continue to work hard to win the election, not just limit the majority of the Labour Party if it is to get into government. But it looks even more difficult for them as every day passes, because time is simply running out for something to change. When Rishi Sunak called the election, he knew there was a wide gap with Labour in the polls, but he hoped that he could turn that round during the election campaign. We are now over halfway in this election campaign, and with regards to the Conservatives and the gap with Labour, that hasn't really changed at all. So Rishi Sunak running out of time for a big moment, something to happen that changes the dynamics of this election campaign. But he insists, and many Conservatives insist, that they haven't given up just yet.
Okay, many thanks, Ollie Barrett, as of now, for joining us live from London on that story. Thank you. And still to come on DD India News Hour. Coming up next, this is what we have for you. On the show, amidst devastating landslides in Papua New Guinea's Enga province, relief assistance from India reached the island nation on Friday. Indian Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar visits the India-Pakistan international border on Thursday near Jaisalmer and boosts the morale of border security force troops.
We just don't bring you the news as it unfolds. We get to the heart of the matter.
We don't just present facts. We demystify complex social, political and economic events.
We break stories that shape the world's present and future, because you deserve the truth.
I am Tanvi Taneja from New Delhi.
I'm Ollie Barrett from London.
I'm Nick Harper from Washington, DC.
Join us on DD India Global Monday to Friday at these times. We just don't bring you the news as it unfolds. We get to the heart of the matter.
We don't just present facts. We demystify complex social, political and economic events.
We break stories that shape the world's present and future, because you deserve the truth.
I am Tanvi Taneja from New Delhi.
I'm Ollie Barrett from London.
I'm Nick Harper from Washington, DC.
Join us on DD India Global Monday to Friday at these times.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Sakal Bhatt, and before we move ahead, let's do a quick recap of the headlines at this hour. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi to attend G7 outreach summit in Italy Artificial intelligence, energy, Africa and the Mediterranean top on the agenda. Prime Minister Modi to hold bilateral meetings with French President Macron, UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and President Zelenskyy of Ukraine. Ukrainian Defense Minister Rustem Umerov joins NATO's Defense Minister in Brussels, says urgent needs and long-term necessity in the institutional changes to be addressed. Special Indian Air Force plane carrying mortal remains of 45 Indians killed in Kuwait building fire arrives in southern Indian city of Kochi. Kuwait government has assured India that paperwork regarding insurance compensation will be done soon. An Indian Air Force special aircraft carrying the mortal remains of 45 nationals who lost their lives in the tragic fire incident in Kuwait arrived in southern Indian city of Kochi on Friday. The aircraft carrying mortal remains of deceased first landed in Kochi as most of the victims hailed from Kerala before proceeding to Delhi for the victims from northern states. India's Minister of State for Tourism, Suresh Gopi, and Kerala Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan were among those who were present at the airport. Among the victims, 23 were from Kerala, 7 from down south Tamil Nadu, and 3 from down south Andhra Pradesh, 4 from central Indian state of Uttar Pradesh, and 2 each from Bihar and Odisha, and 1 each from Jharkhand, southern state of Karnataka, Maharashtra, Punjab, and West Bengal. And India's Minister of State for External Affairs, Kirti Vardhan Singh, has thanked the Kuwaiti government for taking this incident very seriously and completing the procedure of identification so that the mortal remains could be brought back to India.
East Kuwait and the Honorable Prime Minister had already spoken to the authorities there, to the Foreign Minister there, and to the His Highness the Emir there. And I would like to say my thanks to the authorities that they did all possible, they took all possible measures and they really fully cooperated in having all the paperwork completed, the identification done in such a short time, because normally this could have taken a week or at least 10 days. But on Prime Minister's insistence, the authorities were very quick about it. They immediately undertook the task of completing the formalities, and we managed to bring back the bodies here as soon as possible.
The MOSME also said that the government of Kuwait has assured India that all the paperwork regarding the insurance and the compensation will be done as immediately as possible.
Kuwaiti government is taking this incident very seriously and they're taking all possible steps. They're making inquiries as to how it happened, so that this kind of a tragic incident is never repeated again. And they assured us that they will take all possible steps. They have also assured us that all the paperwork regarding the insurance that is to be paid to the families, the compensation, will be done as immediately as possible. And His Highness has also, from his part, also provided a compensation to the families of the victims who have perished in this tragic incident.
And former Minister of State for External Affairs, V. Muralidharan, has said that the Minister of State for External Affairs, Kirti Vardhan Singh, was sent to Kuwait by the Prime Minister to oversee the process of repatriation of the mortal remains sent to India.
The External Affairs Ministry has taken very swift action, and all the mortal remains are being repatriated. The Honorable Minister of State for External Affairs personally was sent by the Prime Minister to oversee the process of repatriation. He also had meetings with the Minister, Deputy Prime Minister and the Interior Minister of Kuwait, as well as the Foreign Minister.
DD India's Ajay Joy joining us live from Thiruvananthapuram, the capital of down south Kerala. Ajay, over to you now. We do know that the mortal remains have arrived in the morning, and now the focus also shifts to the further process and procedures as far as compensation, insurance and other paperwork is concerned, for which the Kuwaiti government has completely expedited the whole process. What more information can you share with our viewers?
Yes, Sakal. Right now, all the mortal remains are on travel to their respective houses across Kerala, escorted by police vehicles. Even the mortal remains from Tamil Nadu and Karnataka, they are also being escorted till their houses in the respective states. And as far as the compensation is concerned, Prime Minister had already announced ex gratia to be distributed from the National Relief Fund. Similarly, from the state side also, 5 lakh rupees compensation ex gratia was declared for the deceased. In addition to that, certain industrialized based in Kerala also announced their assistance, which will be routed to the families of the deceased through NORCA, the nodal agency in Kerala to look after the affairs of non-resident Keralites. Now, the most tragic situation would be to rehabilitate those families, because many of them, they had gone very recently to the Gulf states to build the life which they dreamed. Many of them have many dreams unfulfilled. For example, I'm talking about Binoy Thomas from Chavakad. He had left just on June 5th. He was having a certain debt. He had to service those debts. So it's a very tragic situation unfolding. And hopefully all the philanthropists, the government, they have come together to offer the assistance on time.
But is
that's what it matters.
Okay, the central government, the state government, we've seen they've all stepped up their efforts to see to it that the mortal remains arrive back home, repatriation takes place as soon as possible. But now, as you rightly mentioned, the focus has shifted to rehabilitation. So is there any plan in place as far as that part is concerned, and state government making some sort of plan for that as well, some process?
Concrete plan is yet to be arrived at. Right now only the ex gratia is declared, but after this we hopefully will hear from the state government as well as the other organization. Remember that Kerala being on the center stage of any diaspora discussions.
Yes.
Kerala's diaspora is equally involved into this. So the prominent faces from the diaspora are also expected to come forward and then lend their contributions.
Okay, all right. We'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Ajay, for joining us live from Thiruvananthapuram. Thank you. And amidst, so we have some more news. Amidst devastating landslides in Papua New Guinea's Enga province, relief assistance from India has reached the island nation on Friday. The US $1 million aid was received by PNG, by government officials, including their Foreign Minister Justin Katachenko, Defense Minister Dr. Billy Joseph, Secretary, India's High Commissioner in Papua New Guinea, handed over the material to Foreign Minister Katachenko. He also thanked his India counterpart, Dr. S. J. Shankar, for the timely help.
And we thank the Indian government for their partnership with Papua New Guinea, coming in a time of need for our people that are suffering in the Enga province from this natural disaster that has hit our people. We still pray for all those that have been lost.
Indian Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar visited the India-Pakistan international border on Thursday near Jaisalmer and boosted the morale of the border security forces troops. He offered prayers at the famous Tanutrai Mata temple located near border. Vice President Dhankar paid tributes to the martyrs at the Vijay Stambh located in the temple premises. Following the temple visit, Vice President was given the Guard of Honor by the Special Guard of the BSF. He also interacted with the BSF personnel and encouraged them. Addressing the officers, Vice President said that he felt proud to meet the soldiers of the BSF, known as the first line of defense of the country. India's Jural Oram, Bharatiya Janata Party leader from eastern state Odisha, took charge as the Minister for Tribal Affairs today. He was sworn in as the Cabinet Minister in Prime Minister's Modi 3.0 ministry on Sunday. Oram was also part of the first Modi cabinet from 2014 to 19 as the Tribal Affairs Minister. However, he was succeeded by Arjun Munda. While Oram makes a comeback to Prime Minister Modi-led Union Ministry as Munda lost the 2024 Lok Sabha elections from Jharkhand's Kunti party. Meanwhile, G. Kishan Reddy chaired the first review meeting of the Ministry of Coal after taking charge in New Delhi. Former Union Minister of Coal, Mines and Parliamentary Affairs Prahlad Joshi also handed over the charge to Mr. G. Kishan Reddy on Friday. Moving on, heatwave in India is to linger as the monsoon stalls. The Met Department has issued orange alert for Delhi for 2 to 3 days. Severe heatwave conditions in northern regions, especially in Uttar Pradesh and Bihar and Jharkhand, are likely to continue. The monsoon has already arrived in North India, due to which there has been heavy rainfall in sub-Himalayan region, in West Bengal and in Sikkim. Heavy rains are also expected in northeastern regions such as Assam and Meghalaya.
We expect red alert to continue for the next 4 to 5 days. And for Punjab and Haryana, if we see, we are not seeing such high temperatures over this region, but we are also seeing the heat wave conditions associated with it. We are giving orange alert for next 2 to 3 days, and afterwards we will be going for the yellow alert. For Delhi particular, we are giving orange alert for 2 days and thereafter a reduction. When we are talking of northwest India, currently heat wave conditions are prevailing. We have reports of severe heat wave recorded over stations in East and West Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, Jharkhand, western parts of Gangetic West Bengal. This situation is likely to prevail today also.
The search operation launched in Jammu and Kashmir to track down and neutralize terrorists after the June 9th attack on a bus carrying pilgrims entered the 6th day on Friday. Terrorists stuck at 4 places in Riyasi district, Kathua and Dora districts over the past few days in Jammu region, killing 9 pilgrims and a CRPF Jawan and also leaving 7 security personnel and 7 others severely injured. 2 suspected Pakistani terrorists were also neutralized in an encounter with security forces in Kathua, and a large quantity of arms and ammunition were recovered from them. Meanwhile, the search operation is underway in Riyasi as well as adjoining Rajouri districts in view of intelligence inputs about a possible terror threat. And to further enhance the maritime security, India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh is visiting Visakhapatnam. On his visit, Defence Minister will review the preparedness of the Indian Navy's Eastern Fleet. The Eastern Fleet is a naval fleet of the Indian Navy. It is known as a sword arm of the Eastern Naval Command and called the Sunrise Fleet. It is headquartered at Visakhapatnam in Andhra Pradesh on the east coast of India. And now let's take a look at other stories making news. In the ongoing search against Naxalites, a joint search team of DRG's Bastar fighters, STF, that's Special Task Force, and Cobra Battalion has been on move. An IED planted by Naxals exploded in Bandirpara forest, injuring a DRG personnel who was brought to the hospital for treatment. The Rouse Avenue District Court has postponed the bail plea of Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal in regard to the liquor scam case till 19th of June. Chief Minister Kejriwal had surrendered himself on 2nd of June in Tihar jail. The Supreme Court has given notice to the National Testing Agency amid news of paper leaks and use of unfair means. NTA has to give reply within 2 weeks. The next hearing is scheduled for July 8th. And now let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. After an underperformance in the EU elections, Greek Prime Minister is set to reshuffle his cabinet. The party came first in Sunday's EU's election with 28.3%, but much less than the votes in the national elections last year. Australian Museum is going to play a unique album by a famous US hip-hop group Wu-Tang's Clan from 15 to 24 June. The album, named Once Upon a Time, in Shaolin is getting overwhelming attention with all free tickets sold out already. The Songwriters Hall of Fame organized a red carpet event in New York. Timbaland and Rem band members were among the new inductees of the hall. Also, songwriter Diane Warren received the Johnny Mercer Award. And upset by the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas, famous Latin American music sensation Residente has released his latest song, Bajolo, in collaboration with artists from across the globe. The rapper, who also stars in the film In the Summers, said that he chose to express his grief through his music. And now to all the updates on the International Yoga Day, which will be celebrated across the globe on 21st of June. Within a week left for the celebration of International Yoga Day, the High Commission of India in Sri Lanka's Eastern Province Tourism Bureau has organized a mega yoga event on Friday. The event saw participation by around 5,000 students and members of the society. Governor of Eastern Province, Senthil Thondaman, thanked Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi for making yoga popular worldwide. The event is part of the 10-day-long Yoga Mahotsav, which will end on 22nd of June in Colombo.
This is the largest yoga gathering in Sri Lanka. So I would also like to thank the Indian Prime Minister, Honorable Narendra Modi, for making sure that this practice is being internationally recognized and spread all over the world.
In collaboration with India Gandhi Cultural Centre or IGCC, High Commission of India, Dhaka, Evergreen Yoga event was organized as a pre-event at popular Ravindra Sarovar Park in Dhanmondi in Dhaka on Friday. The event is aimed to garner attention towards upcoming International Day of Yoga 2024 with focus on popularizing the benefits of yoga to the masses. The event witnessed greater participation by yoga practitioners and enthusiasts. Currently, the country boasts more than 200 certified yoga teachers and nearly 25 active yoga organizations in the capital itself. Many more Yoga Day related events are lined up in the coming week across the country as people are demonstrating great interest towards yoga. Washington's top diplomat in Taiwan has warned on Friday that China's proactive actions around Taiwan, Japan and South China Sea could unintentionally spark a broader conflict. Speaking at a press conference, Sandra Udrich, the outgoing director of the American Institute in Taiwan, has emphasized the position of the United States.
The United States is profoundly devoted to a status quo in the Straits and in the region, the broader region, that is one of peace and stability. And that is why we have consistently urged the PRC to avoid coercive or provocative actions.
In other news, Tesla shareholders have voted to reinstate CEO Elon Musk's pay package worth up to $56 billion. It's the largest pay deal in corporate US history, but was struck down by a judge in January, citing its size. Tony Waterman has more from outside the Tesla Gigafactory in Austin, where the vote took place, on what it could mean for India.
As you'd imagine, Elon Musk had a lot of pep in his step when he took the stage at the shareholders meeting held at the Gigafactory right here behind me. He told the crowd that he loved them, and he said that he could grow the company tenfold again, which is an amazing feat and part of the reason why he was eligible for this record-breaking payout. This vote was really a vindication for Musk, who has been battling in the courts to get his due. A judge in Delaware threw out the deal in January. She called it unfathomable, and she also raised concerns about the independence of Tesla's board, which struck the deal with Musk back in 2018. Now, even though shareholders have given their blessing, it does not mean that Musk will automatically get the Tesla shares owed to him. His legal team will first need to convince that very skeptical Delaware judge that nullified the deal to reinstate it. So it could be many, many more months before Musk can exercise the stock options in this deal, if at all. What the vote does do, though, is that it gives Musk a mandate, a permission slip to continue to lead the company the way he sees fit. And he has made it very clear that, at least in part, Tesla's future lies in India. He's been pushing aggressively to expand in the country as sales slump in China. And there have been reports that Tesla could, among other things, invest upwards of $3 billion in a new factory in India. Tony Waterman in Austin, Texas, reporting for DD India.
Well, you're watching DD India News Hour, and it's time to dip into some sports stories. Well, Germany began their quest for a first major title in a decade as the Euro 2024 hosts played their Group A opener against Scotland on Friday to kick off the tournament. Germany have won 4 World Cups and 3 European Championships, but have faced a series of failures since their 2014 World Cup victory in Brazil. They exited the last Euro in the round of 16. Germany will need to underline those big ambitions against the Scots, who are playing in back-to-back European Championships for the first time since 1996. Meanwhile, Scotland, clear underdogs, are hoping for an early upset that could help guide them through the group stage for the first time in 11 international tournaments. The United States of America will take on Ireland in the T20 World Cup match in Fort Lauderdale, Dale City in Florida on Friday. They will hope to qualify for the Super 8 stage of the tournament. USA can join India with a win against the Irish. Pakistan, who are also in Group A, will also be closely monitoring the game, and they would hope for an Irish win, to stay in contention for Super 8. Weather forecasts hint at a strong possibility of rainfall, and even a washout would eliminate Pakistan from a competition. Pakistan have 2 points from 3 games, while US has 4 points from 3 games. And Afghanistan beat Papua New Guinea by 7 wickets in Trinidad to reach the Super 8 stage of 2020 World Cup. They have ended New Zealand's slim hopes of progressing, spearheaded by left-arm seamer Fazal Hook Farooqi. The Afghan bowlers kept opponents under 100 runs for the 3rd time in their 3 matches in the tournament, dismissing the Papuans for 95. In another match, England needed only 19 balls to thrash already eliminated Oman by 8 wickets in record time and keep their hopes alive of reaching the Super 8 stage of T20 World Cup. England made a speedy start as Oman were skittled out for 47 in 13.2 overs. The win was the fastest in T20 World Cup history and crucially gave the holders a better net run rate than rival Scotland. India's Divya Deshmukh has added another significant title to her already impressive collection by winning the World Junior Girls Chess Championship 2024 on Thursday. The 18-year-old from Nagpur beat Bulgaria's Beloslava Kratseva in the final round in the Gift City club in Chandigarh. The top-seeded Divya finished with 10 points out of a possible 11 as she remained unbeaten, winning 9 games and drawing 2. Meanwhile, the title in the open section was claimed by Kazakhstan's Kaziabek Nogurbek. Rafael Nadal has confirmed he will not take part in the Wimbledon 2024 championship in order to prepare for the Paris 2024 Olympics starting in July. The 30-year-old is a record 14-time winner of the French Open. However, he has been far from his best after returning from injuries and has exited the tournament at Roland Garros. Nadal will team up with Carlos Alcaraz to play in the doubles at the Olympics. And the Olympic flame has reached the island of Tahiti on Thursday as the Olympic torch relay dazzled onlookers at the beach. Tahiti is the same place that will be hosting Olympic surfing events for Paris 2024 Games. The flame was carried by boat to the surf spot where Olympic surfers will compete for the gold when the Summer Games kick off in July. That's all for this edition of DD India News Hour, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can, for those on the go, you can catch all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Sakal Bhatt from all of us here in New Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live.
Complex issue.